I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Mr. Harry, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to the second hour of Dr. J Radio Live. I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Angels, or City of Demons, depending on who you ask. And you know we are internationally syndicated with L&M, late night in the Midlands in the U.S., as well as deprogrammed radio in the United Kingdom, as well as the terrestrial affiliates. And now we bring you another amazing guest, especially because tomorrow are the midterm elections. Every single one of the 50 states are involved. Every single one of the 50 states are important, and people around the world are paying so much attention to what's happening in the United States because we literally affect change all around the world. So this hour, I'd like to introduce someone very great. We've talked right before the show, and we have a lot in common. For one, he's also a radio host himself. He does a show 5 days a week, almost going on 20 straight years. His radio show is also turned into a television show on Fridays and Sundays in New Orleans, Louisiana. He was also a Louisiana Trump delegate, and he was at the RNC. His resume goes on and on. I mean, for instance, I see here Deputy Chairman, Executive Director, like I said, for the Louisiana Republican Party, and so much more. And that's why I know this Power Hour is going to be super special. So if you haven't seen the ads promoting this guest, well, then it's time for me to introduce him, Mr. Jeff Crouere. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dr. J, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a true pleasure to talk to you. And by the way, Dr. Estelman says hello to you as well. Of course, he recognized you and he remembered you just like you did to him. So we were talking multiple things. You know, he wrote the largest book on the Bilderbergers in 68 countries, right. 42 languages. But also the Bilderbergers have something to do with what's going on now. Now, a lot of people, for instance, say, okay, well, there's Republicans, Democrats, the two-party system, because the third party really hasn't affected any change except years ago when there was possibly with Ron Paul, even though he wouldn't have won, but it was enough to where it would have slightly affected either the Republicans or Democrats. But Jeff, tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think right now it's R's versus D's as much as it is establishment versus patriots. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, Dr. J, and let me just say this. I think you're right about the third party. We had a chance, I think years ago, when Ross Perot was involved, and we had a real chance to upend the political system, and he fizzled out, and then all these efforts since then. Ron Paul, I think, gave it a good try, but the two-party system is really entrenched. And within those two parties, you have an establishment that is very powerful. And the Democrats, of course, in the last election, corrupted the process and gave the nomination to Hillary Clinton. The outsider there, Bernie Sanders, was denied that nomination through a corrupt rigging of their election. On the Republican side, Donald Trump just sort of overwhelmed the 16 other candidates, overturned the establishment, took over the party. And since then, he's had critics and people within the Republican Party who have tried to destroy him. And I think some of those people are more fearsome enemies than people in the Democrat Party. So, yeah, I think this has been very unusual to have an outsider, an anti-establishment guy, overtake the party, take that nomination away from the insiders. And they're still not over it, Dr. J. They still haven't gotten over 2016.
No, no, they absolutely have not. And one thing that we just talked with Daniel, and the only way I know about this is from Roger Stone, because it actually took me by storm, that Trump's cabinet, only 3 members voted for him. The others voted for Hillary. And I know the Bushes were not happy. They didn't want him as president. And the Bushes and the Clintons are, friends, and they've been friends for a long time. I believe, I mean, of course, we can't see proof of this, but I truly believe they did vote for Miss Clinton. And I'm blown away by that. I mean, they couldn't even toe their own party line unless, of course, it's the establishment party line that they wanted to toe, which is actually really sad because the lie that it's spreading throughout the United States for all citizens is not a very good one to say, hey, well, because you see Bill Clinton and Hillary and George Herbert Walker Bush, or not him anymore because he's getting of the age, George W. Bush and Martha hanging out like, hey, they're best of friends. Well, then if that's the case and they're just best of friends, then why were they such competition to each other unless it was for show?
Well, it wasn't, and I think it was partly for show, and partly it was just, which group of insiders would control the spoils. I mean, it wasn't a lot of ideological differences because they have so much in common. I think with Trump, you had a guy who really was bringing different ideas to the table, a whole different agenda, a complete different paradigm. And that's why I think they were so freaked out by him. He was going to upset that apple cart that has been in place for so long, ever since Reagan, really, because Reagan was an outsider. When he finished his 2 terms, then the Bushes took over. And ever since then, we really haven't had a change agent since, until 2016, until Donald Trump. So you're right. I think as he goes along, he's getting into his cabinet people that are more attuned to his philosophy and that are better representatives of the people that voted for Donald Trump. I think he started off with some insiders because he had to fill a cabinet, and he hadn't done this before, and he was totally new to this. So he took the advice of people like Reince Priebus and party hacks who had been around for a long time, and I think he filled it with some people that he wasn't really happy with, and as he goes along, I think he's making some needed changes.
Now, you started doing your show, I believe you said in a month, it's going to be 20 years, right?
Right, 1999.
99. Okay, so yeah, exactly. As soon as in 1999, we were still under, of course, President Clinton. Was there any reason that made you start doing your show then? Were you a Republican going back then?
Back then, I just finished my term as being executive director and deputy chairman of the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And I got an offer to do a program because I knew all the politicos and the people in the media had done a lot of interviews from my years in the Republican Party. And a friend of mine was starting a radio station, so he invited me on, and I jumped at it and didn't think it was going to be my profession. I mean, I thought it was just going to be sort of a hobby. And it turned out to be something I really enjoyed doing, and still doing it, 20 years later.
I could actually relate to that. This sort of fell in my lap as a hobby, and I never thought I'd be doing this many days a week for this many years. Now, again, one of the big reasons I wanted you on today is because of what's happening tomorrow, the midterm elections in all 50 states. Here in Southern California, it's kind of hard to effect any change since it's predominantly blue. If I wear my Make America Great Again hat, I get sort of dirty looks from people. But I do got to say this, Jeff. In 2016, during the presidential election, and I wore that hat, I got the finger. I got the dirtiest looks. I got every name under the book you could think of being called, and that was me. However, this is what blows my mind. Still living in suburbia in Los Angeles County, when I went to vote for this year's early primaries for our governor, I was wearing my MAGA hat, and I could not believe that people were not, giving me the finger and or anything or saying anything negative. As a matter of fact, I actually got a few smiles, and some people even said a few things. And I'm starting to wonder, wow, did a year and a half really start to see change? Because a lot of things happened. How many presidents can say that or promise things during their campaign and actually keep a lot of them and not flip-flop? I mean, I cannot think of anything recently like that. I mean, it didn't happen with both Bushes. It didn't happen with the Clinton. It didn't happen with Obama. I mean, I believe each one of those presidents in some way or another made our country worse. The last president that I think did any good for us was Ronald Reagan, and he was the only other candidate who ran under Make America Great Again.
That's so true, Dr. J. And we've had disasters ever since Reagan, and our country has become worse off. Our people, I mean, our wages haven't gone up. I mean, people have been struggling. So I think the reason you're getting some smiles, even out in liberal California, is that people are working again. They're getting higher wages. They're seeing the economy improve. So maybe they're realizing, hey, this Donald Trump is onto something. His ideas work. Cutting taxes and cutting regulation is not a bad idea. Unleashing the oil industry and getting out of these ridiculous climate change treaties and trying to put our military on a solid footing. I mean, those are some good ideas. And you're right. He is one of the first presidents we've had since Reagan who's really tried to follow through on his promises. And remember George H.W. Bush, read my lips, no new taxes. That was his number one pledge.
That's right.
And what did he do? He lied. He went back on his pledge to the American people. Look at what Obama did, promising all this stuff about Obamacare. I mean, you can keep your plan. If you want to keep your plan, keep your doctor. If you want to keep your doctor. Lies. Bunch of liars. So I think this man is trying to keep his promises. He needs a Congress to work with him. That's why we've got to have a Republican Congress to at least work with the president. A lot of these rhinos are getting out. So we can get some people in there that really have, a desire to change and a desire to work with the president. And I think that'd be a great thing. I mean, but a lot's going to depend on tomorrow, Dr. J. If we get in a blue wave, then we're going to be in real trouble.
Agreed. Now, according to me, for my own personal preference, I used to watch Fox if I wanted to watch national news, but then I discovered One American News Network, OANN. And when, of course, I had Roger Stone on, I told him the same thing. I said, look, I don't know if I could trust any mainstream media. However, One American News Network seems to be the only thing that's closest to the truth. And he said, well, aside from InfoWars, because he is biased doing a show 5 days a week there, he said that's the only network that he actually trusts. They were the only people that were talking about a red wave. And I said this before with Daniel, that all the mainstream leftist networks, CNN, or as some people like to call Clinton News Network or Communist News Network, MSNBC, things like that.
Corrupt News Network,
all of the above. They were all talking about this upcoming blue wave. But today on ABC, this blew my mind. Not only did they not say there's a blue wave coming, or they didn't even call it a red wave. They said a red tsunami. Now, that to me is more telling than anything else, because it sounds to me like, wow, okay, we're hours away from, not quite hours, but I guess you could say 12 hours before states on the East Coast are going to start electing or holding their elections. And I think they finally realized all the propaganda, all the news that they were trying to portray the president and everybody else in a bad light and everybody else on the left in a good light actually did not work. I think the average American is a lot smarter than they think we are. And I think all these Americans are finally realizing, hey, wait a minute. Since we've had this president in office, we are able to do more. We have more jobs. Like we said, the consumer confidence is up. Things that you could not really say before, because before the only way to fix an economy is war. And that's a horrible, horrible way.
Right,
Trump
right.
found a way to do it without it.
Yeah. Well, you make some good points. I think the public has gotten wise to the media. I think over the years, people have learned the media is liberal, the media is corrupt, the media is biased, the media is in the pocket of the Democrats. We saw it in 2016. They were predicting 90% chance Hillary was going to win.
Yes.
And people went out and voted for Donald Trump anyway. 63 million people ignored the media and voted for Donald Trump. So now we've got that experience. We know what the media is all about. We're not watching CNN or MSNBC. Fox is my best choice here because I don't have OAN in my market. I do like InfoWars. I like some of these other outlets. But I think that people are wise to the corruption of the media. And I think all their efforts over these past few months to set the wave, to depress the Republican vote, has not worked. The Kavanaugh hearing, I think, energized a lot of Republicans. The caravan of migrants coming here, that's energizing a lot of Republicans. The good economy is energizing them. So I think they'll be energized. I also have to tell you, though, the other side is energized. And these liberals are, they're fired up. I mean, they have a lot of hate. They do not like Donald Trump. They're rallying their base too. So they're coming out in big numbers. Republicans are coming out in big numbers. That's why tomorrow we're going to see, when it's all said and done, the biggest turnout ever for a midterm election.
Agreed. I definitely think there is going to be one of the largest turnouts ever. And reporting on this because I could see the mainstream media, the corrupt news network and things like that, downplaying it. Oh, the only reason the Republicans or the anti-establishment, that's the way I like to call them, won was because not enough people voted and things like that. I could definitely see that little spin because the propaganda, once you start paying attention to it, and I know you've been able to pay attention to it and to compare it because you're also involved in this industry. Like I said, 20 years of what you've been commenting and talking about it, when they're trying to use propaganda to get us to sway our opinions. But I just think they're really underestimating Americans. This is just speculation. Do you have an idea why they would treat us in such a stupid manner?
I think they've got a condescending view of the typical American. I think the typical member of the media is a liberal elitist who views sort of a middle-class, blue-collar American Rust Belt voter as someone who's ignorant, someone that doesn't know what's good for him or her. And they believe that they need to tell us what to do. They need to, point the way. They need to enlighten us as to, what our position should be about whether it be guns or abortion or climate change or any of these other issues that the left harps on. And, along came Donald Trump, and he upended that whole formula. And they just hate him like I've never seen any politician hated in my life. I mean, I thought, Dr. J, they hated Reagan. That was a walk in the park compared to what this president has had to go through. And the real worry that I have tomorrow is if these unhinged, crazed liberals take power, they are going to pursue the biggest, farce in American history, this impeachment nonsense against this president to just try to derail everything he's doing. There's nothing worthy of impeachment. There's no crimes that have been committed. There's no collusion. There's nothing there. But they're going to pursue that as a way to stop him and harass him and bring him down so that he's vulnerable in 2020.
Definitely. I'm assuming through your show, you've probably talked to Jerome Corsi.
I have. I used to talk to Jerome Corsi frequently, but lately he's been tied up trying to deal with his own issues with this ridiculous special counsel.
That's right. That's right. And That's another thing that we talked about with him off air and then on air with Roger Stone. Mueller, I always say this. If anyone has, 10, 20, $30 million and they don't have offshore accounts, then something's not right. I highly doubt Robert Mueller has all these millions of dollars, because I think the last time I checked, it was like 17 some million. I'm sure he's got a Swiss account or a bank in the Caymans. I think he's just angry, one, because of course Hillary didn't win, and two, because he wanted to be the head of the FBI and he didn't get the job. But then that begs the question. Donald Trump always fires people who don't do their job. I mean, that's why he's had so many changes in the cabinet. I'm wondering why if Jeff Sessions was going to recuse himself and let Rod Rosenstein have a special counsel to look into this so-called collusion, which is a total hoax. There have been so many pieces of evidence that show Russia was not involved. If any collusion existed, it was between the U.S. and the U.K.'s MI6 with Christopher Steele. The point is why do you think, and again, it's pure speculation, why would President Trump keep Jeff Sessions if he knew that he was going to recuse himself and have Rod Rosenstein, who I think is very, very dirty, and of course, who brought in the special counsel, Robert Mueller, which is going on for a year and a half at this point?
Right. It's ridiculous. Here's what I think happened. I think Dr. J, he rewarded Jeff Sessions for his loyalty during the campaign. Jeff Sessions wanted to be Attorney General. I think he picked him thinking he was going to be a bulldog, a protector, someone who was going to be an asset. And then he realized soon thereafter that it was a terrible mistake. Sessions recused himself, unleashing this ridiculous investigation, this unfair witch hunt. And he has been, I think, very reluctant to fire Jeff Sessions because of the uproar that would create, and because he'd have to get a replacement confirmed by the Senate. And Jeff Sessions has so many friends in the Republican Party, and I think it was going to be very difficult for him to get a replacement confirmed. I think that's one of the reasons he's working so hard to get senators, because he wants to build the Republican numbers so he can get his, new appointments through, confirmed in this second half of his term. And I think Jeff Sessions is going to be gone. He's been the biggest disappointment in the administration. He's been horrible. He's been weak. He's been timid in dealing with the deep state. He's let Rod Rosenstein run everything. And, at least Eric Holder, and I don't like anything about Eric Holder, except the fact that he said that he was Obama's wingman. So he was going to be protecting Obama as Attorney General. So Obama could feel confident he had his guy at the Department of Justice. I have no confidence in the people at the Department of Justice protecting President Trump. In fact, they're a threat to President Trump. He's surrounded by people, Dr. J, that are a threat to him. And that's got to be an uncomfortable position for the president.
I know, and I feel so sorry for him because here's the problem. If he was to fire Rod Rosenstein right now, well, I know the left will jump on it, and of course it will not go well. And I knew that regardless of what happened, it would have to be sometime after the midterm elections if he was going to get rid of Sessions and Rod Rosenstein. But then what would happen to Mueller? Because people are going to say, well, he didn't want to get investigated. He didn't want to risk himself being prosecuted, and therefore he removed the threat. But in your opinion, what's it going to take to finally give Mueller the boot and Rosenstein the boot and Sessions the boot? Because if you just fire Sessions and appoint someone else as your attorney general, is that going to all of a sudden have a whole new set of people, including a new special prosecutor, or will this finally be dumped? Because when they're asking the most stupid questions, like I remember some of the questions which Roger Stone was asking, because it was just right after he was investigated or under oath by Mueller. Are you gay? Are you the father of Kristen Davis's son? What color socks do you wear? It's like, what does that have to do with collusion? And then, of course, I'm sure you saw it on the news the other day, the fact that he knows somebody who knows Julian Assange of WikiLeaks. Well, even that, what the heck does it matter?
Right.
People know people. It just blows my mind.
You're right. It does, and it's harassment. I mean, it's just unfair power that's invested in this guy, and he is going after friends of the president, and he's going after key people like General Flynn, and of course, Dr. Corsi and Roger Stone, and all these other people. Manafort, he took him out.
Yes.
On down the list, and none of it has to do with collusion. All of it is extraneous issues. It shows that he's out of control. He's going on a fishing expedition. So what I think is going to happen is after the midterm, and hopefully there'll be more Republican senators, he's going to get rid of Sessions. He's going to bring on a new attorney general who will hopefully then bring on a new deputy attorney general. And the new attorney general will then be able to oversee the special counsel and be able to wrap that up hopefully quickly. And I think right now, I mean, Rosenstein is just letting, Mueller do whatever he wants to do, and he's just going on and on and on and on, and he's getting the green light. So I think now you've got to have some sort of control over him, and I think a new attorney general would be able to do that. So that's how I see that happening after the midterm, and hopefully he's got a good list of attorney generals that he can pick. I notice it, whenever he chooses a new person for a position, it's an improvement. He's improved the position of Secretary of State. He's improved the Chief of Staff. When he gets around to, seeing somebody in action and learning the job, I think he then has a better idea who he wants in that position. And I think he'll pick a very good attorney general to replace Sessions.
Do you think by doing that he's able to, if the new attorney general comes in, hence being another deputy attorney general or inspector general, do you think that the same special counsel, Robert Mueller, will still be there, or will he sort of get lost or get fired because the person who's overseeing him, Rosenstein, will no longer be there? So do you think he will be able to wrap up Mueller's super long investigation, which is still going on, paid for by our good old tax dollars, as opposed to, I don't understand where they're trying to get anywhere aside from the fact that they are trying to get him out of office. They're still bent over 2016. And the sad thing is Rod Rosenstein, the fact that he was recorded talking about trying to invoke the 25th Amendment. I mean, really, you have a president who doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs, clearly is it fit in his own mind, and yet they're trying to say he's mentally unfit and therefore remove him from president. I mean, all of these just anger me in some way because the politics of this country have gone, way, way, way beyond than anything else. It's actually very, very scary. Let me ask you about Russia real quick. We just had the demise of the nuclear treaty. Do you know why, or do you think something is going to be in the works that's going to fix that again? Because I've always gotten the impression that, of course, Trump wants to have a good relationship with Putin, the same way he did with Kim Jong-un, even though he was calling him Little Rocket Man and all these other names before. They had that very famous meeting in Singapore. Kim Jong-un is planning on going to South Korea, specifically to Seoul, to meet President Moon, and it's in talks of when they're going to have another face-to-face with Trump.
Right.
So I would think that would be the same thing with Vladimir Putin. Maybe what the mainstream media, what we're seeing is just for show about this, we're enemies to them, or Russia hates us, or they're going to annihilate us, this and that. But I think underneath all that fake propaganda, the relationship between the two is far better than it was.
Well, I mean, I think the president has a genuine desire for a good relationship with Putin, but I think everybody around him within the deep state and the media is trying to prevent that from happening. I mean, what I find sort of comical, Dr. J, is that when Russia was the Soviet Union and when you had brutal communist dictators leading the Soviet Union, the media and the Democrats were constantly clamoring for negotiations and talks, and we've got to reach out to the Soviet Union and work with them. We can't be belligerent toward them. And now that you have a non-communist there, and it's no longer the Soviet Union, and you have someone who's a Christian and someone that we can find some areas to work with, then the media has changed its tune and says, oh, he's a brutal dictator. He's the worst person in the world. You can't work with him. You've got to oppose him. Donald Trump's a puppet. Any kind of collaboration shows that he's controlled by Putin. I mean, it's farcical. I mean, the person who I think obviously would have been the American leader that would have been someone that wouldn't stand up to Putin would have been Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump, I think, is putting America first. He's going to be a nationalist. He is someone that wants to rebuild our military. But I also think he can find some areas with Putin that they can agree on. I think he wants to have a good relationship with him. So hopefully they'll figure out a way to revamp that accord where it works. Right now, I think he got rid of it because China was having the ability to develop all sorts of weapons that we were not able to. Mm-hmm. So I think he believes that our greatest threat is China, not Russia. Yes. So he wants to be able to make sure that we're prepared for that threat. So hopefully we will have a better relationship with Putin. We should. We need to. And I think we can. If Donald Trump has his way, I think we will.
And the problem is like you said with China, they keep stealing because of hacking our blueprints for our classified planes and things like that. So we're doing all the R&D and then they're just getting it for free. You take that in combination with the fact that their standing army is so much, their standing army is way, way, way larger than ours. I mean, even the population of the U.S. compared to the standing army of China, not including those people who would be, I don't know if they have a draft or something, if something major was going on in that country, would outnumber us in so many ways. We would literally be annihilated unless we somehow teamed up with Russia or somebody else or started to have good relations. I believe President Trump, didn't he just meet with President Xi from China?
Well, I think he talked to him, and I think they are going to be meeting in Argentina. There's going to be a G20 meeting coming up, and I think they're going to have talks. And I think this will be an opportunity, hopefully, for us to get these trade differences ironed out. I think the real problem is that it's an unfair deal right now with China. We don't have access to their markets. We've got this massive trade deficit with them. The president is intent on renegotiating with China as he should. We got a better deal with Mexico and China. We revamped NAFTA, and I think we can revamp our, trade deals with China and hopefully help our economy. I mean, that'll even boost our economy even more and our stock market even more. But China, to me, Dr. J, is our number one threat in the world, our number one adversary, and a country that we need to be very wary of, but we certainly still should be talking with them. I mean, I think talks are better than the alternative.
Now, I'm going to ask you something about the other side, the Dems. And I don't use the word Democrats because they're actually more socialists than Democrats because democracy doesn't really fit what they're doing. But I'm seeing a split between the Democrats and the Democratic Socialists of America. Obviously, Bernie Sanders led that first assault, then came Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and there's a few other people. And by default, now she's going to be in Congress. Now, what kind of change can that one person affect? I don't know, but I do know the day she won, the search for socialism on Google went up 1,500%. I couldn't even tell you how many more groups within colleges started, but everything that you talk about, Medicare for all, government-controlled jobs, government-controlled housing and money, is moving away from capitalism. And I keep saying this to people. Don't they understand what socialism did in the past? I mean, it's communism and it's still Marxism, except you have the government, a group of oligarchs, or one tyrant controlling everything. So National Socialist Party, the Nazi Party, national, right? If they just called it the German Socialist Party, how different would that be than calling it the Democratic Socialists of America Party? What if we removed America and Democrat from it and just say the National Socialist Party of America? Well, then we'd literally have the same name, but I don't know why people are not putting two and two together. What's your idea about what's going on with DSA? Do you see a split between the Dems and DSA?
I see, Dr. J, the Dems moving further to the left.
Yes.
I think they are becoming more in tune with the socialist wing of the Democratic Party. You know, the days of Scoop Jackson Democrats, Jack Kennedy Democrats, pro-defense, pro-tax cut type Democrats, I think that's long gone. Now you have a bunch of people that would make George McGovern look conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, remember we thought George McGovern was a super left-winger. I mean, he's got nothing on Bernie Sanders and Andrew Gillum and some of these Democrats that might be in power tomorrow. So you're right. The agenda is, of course, free stuff, Medicare for all, free college tuition. I mean, whatever they can give away for free. The problem is, of course, somebody's got to pay for all of this. And they never get their numbers right. They never figure out that you have to destroy the economy to bring about that kind of infusion into the government. And these young people are just, unfortunately, so ill-informed. They're taught by liberals, these professors in their ivory towers with no real-world experience. They teach them this socialism. They soak it up. And, of course, they go out there and vote for people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, and they believe that is the way that we need to go in this country, and they couldn't be more wrong. And I'd say example number one to show everybody is Venezuela. If you want to see what socialism does to a country, look at Venezuela. That country is teetering on the edge of total collapse, and that is a socialist-run government. And I would just tell people, we do not want to go in that direction.
It is, and the sad thing is although it should be covered on the news a lot more, it really is not. And I think the reason it's not is because they want us to go in that direction without showing us all the faults of what it's going to do this country. And when you said the numbers, I've heard lots of numbers of what people are trying to say to justify the Medicare for all, the government housing, and all this. One analyst actually said that if just to implement all these programs for 1 year, we would have to have 100% tax rates. We would have to have basically everything that people in the United States own belong to the government, and you would have nothing coming in because everything you would have would be going out. And that would probably only cover us for a year, if so. So I don't understand how they would think that this would work on forever, because the thing is if we are in such a socialist, I guess, environment or country or form of politics that we use, which I don't even consider socialism a form of politics as much as I consider it tyranny or fascism. The problem with that is we're expendable. If you don't produce for them, then what good are we? They could just cut us off. We don't get our food rations for the day, or we don't get this doctor. And that's another thing. It blows my mind when I'm trying to describe to people, why they should vote red instead of blue. I always ask the basic question. I said, do you enjoy choosing which doctors you go for your children? Do you enjoy having free choice or having the ability to make money if you're investing in things? And people still can't make that connection. And I don't know what else to say. What would you tell people if you were to ask one question to someone who's torn and says, oh, I don't buy into politics, it's just a show, they're all the same thing?
Right.
What question would you say to them to basically ask
Well,
them?
I would say this. Do you enjoy making your own decisions, or do you want the government to make your decisions for you? Do you enjoy personal liberty, or do you want to be a ward of the state? I mean, that's the change. I mean, that's what we're looking at, to go from a state based on liberty and freedom and the Constitution to a state run by, government bureaucrats who tell the people what to do, where to go, what is allowed. And look at what happens when liberals get power. They squelch freedom. And look what is going on with the First Amendment. Look at what's going on with free speech, Dr. J. I mean, liberals used to have this reputation in the 60s of being all about peace and love and freedom and anything goes and anybody's allowed to speak their mind. That's the furthest thing from the truth today. They're all about saying the word police, the thought police, the speech police, what you can and cannot say. And that's what they want to do across the board. They want control. And that to me is dangerous. And I would hope as young people get older, they realize that and would turn away from that kind of dangerous ideology, which, again, there's no recorded example in history of socialism working. And capitalism, when allowed to be unfettered from the strong arm of government, succeeds. And we've gotten a taste of it in these first 2 years of Donald Trump, and we've had a lot of success. Why in the world would you want to turn away from that and go towards something that doesn't work is beyond me.
Agreed. And thank you for saying ward of the state, because that is exactly what I was saying earlier, how we are expendable, because once that happens, what difference would me versus you make to those oligarchs at the top controlling us? Because once they actually seize all that power, they're going to be the ones to make decisions for themselves and us, which is probably going to be beyond the saddest thing. Now, let me ask you about your radio show. Almost 20 years, soon to be 20 years. I'm sure you've had very notable guests on there. If you were to pick a handful, who would you say were some of the most exciting guests that were the most insightful that you've had on your show?
That's a great question. I mean, I've enjoyed a lot of great guests over the years. I've had presidents on. I mean, I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of elected officials, authors, people that are, distinguished in their fields. I've enjoyed interviewing people like ones we've talked about in this program, Dr. Corsi, Daniel Esselin, people that are really great thinkers and folks that I think have really made an impact. I've also enjoyed, Dr. J, interviewing people that are from different areas. Like I know your show has a wide variety of topics that you talk about, and I do too. I talk about I have astrophysicists on. We talk about religion. We talk about the economy. We talk about all sorts of different topics that are not just politics. So that's what I really enjoy doing, a wide variety of topics. In our years, we've been doing it now, we're coming up on 20 years. So every year I have about 1,000 guests. So I've had about 19,000 guests on in those 19 years. And it's hard to pick out one or two that are the ones that have really stood out. But I'll tell you, from just being on the program, the things I really enjoy the most are the interaction with my callers. We have a lot of great callers who add incredible insights to the program. And each day we interact with all kinds of people from around the country, and that's always a blast. So it's been a great ride. I mean, I really have enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to, celebrating 20 years and, still enjoying expressing, freedom of speech. And that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about my freedom of speech being infringed upon by the government, by whether it is some kind of edict, some kind of law, any kind of different way that they would try to shut me down, like they've done with Alex Jones, like they've done with so many of these internet sites that we've seen.
And it's getting worse, and sadly, way, way, way worse. I remember the day Alex Jones and Roger Stone were taken off social media. The only social media I know of that they're on is Minds. I do know that day Alex Jones InfoWars subscriptions went up tenfold, but obviously that still harms him because people can't hear or as easily and as readily available as they once were able to because of all this censorship. And if we're supposed to have these social media outlets that are supposed to give us free reign to do what we want and to not be censored, well, then they're doing anything but that by censoring us. And let me say one thing about your show, Jeff. The fact that you have callers, voters, I don't think enough people give them the time of day to actually tell us what they think, because it's those people that the politicians should be paying attention to. It's the voters that the listeners should be listening to and saying, hey, I feel the same way, or I disagree about this topic, but these 3 other topics is something I'm glad this person said it because I'm afraid to say it based on where I live or based on the judgments I'll have. So those are very, very important. When you said things that are being infringed, one thing that comes to mind is Antifa. I am blown away how a group like Antifa exists and started to exist literally only after we started to see Trump winning and Hillary losing.
I saw this group up close and personal in New Orleans, Dr. J, because we had a super liberal mayor down here who made it a goal of his to take down all the Confederate statues that were in New Orleans. And there were a lot of folks out there who disagreed with it. They were out there campaigning for the monuments to stay up because they believe in history. They don't want to erase history. Liberals want to erase history. Liberals believe in political correctness. They don't believe in freedom of speech. And they want to have just sort of one world view. So anyway, when you had these various protests at these monument sites, who shows up but these out-of-town thugs who come in, they're violent, they're nasty, they come in and attack these folks that are protesting in favor of the monuments, and it turns out that they're Antifa. And I saw them up close and personal. These are people that are dangerous. Many of them probably should be arrested. I think they're being funded by, obviously, folks like George Soros and people that want to spread that kind of misery across the country. And they're a real danger. Look at what they did at Trump rallies across the country. I saw them at Trump rallies. I went to several Trump rallies. I saw them there. The Trump people weren't the ones being violent. It was the leftists. It was Antifa that was provoking the violence. And somehow they get away with it all the time. They never seem to suffer any penalties for their violent behavior. So it's a real worry, and I'm concerned about that group. I think they're a big danger. I really do.
They are, and they're very, very violent. I've come across them around here in Southern California. I remember when people were going to protest in front of Maxine Waters' place, and somehow she got the word out to all her fans. I mean, they were sitting there burning American flags, and I'm not talking about every member of Antifa, or every member of that group was Antifa, but they were there. I mean, they look very menacing with their steel-toe boots, with their hoodies and their bandanas. I mean, I would think if I was a police officer, I would look at them and be like, hold on a second, shouldn't we pay attention to what these people are doing? Breaking windows, hitting people with bats and chains and smashing cars. Again, it's almost as if the liberal police, depending on where you are allowing this to happen. And that is actually more sad than anything else. We do got about 5 minutes left, and I want to give enough time for you to plug in all your information. Like I said, I will call you after so I could talk to you about a few other things. But let me say one thing that I did say to Daniel, and I've been saying every time we've talked about politics leading up to tomorrow's midterms. Now, for instance, in Massachusetts, you probably know of Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. He is running against Elizabeth Warren, also known as Pocahontas, but he has to run as an independent, even though he's a Make America Great Again not quite politician, but candidate. And the reason he said he's doing it is because the Republicans in Massachusetts are all anti-Trump. And so it's pretty sad when he can't even go into that same party because those are establishment politicians. So when Trump has done all these rallies to support candidates of who should be voted for, I say the people that really should be focused on are the people that he has actually endorsed, as opposed to, say, the Republican Massachusetts. Because if those kind of Republicans come in, the establishment, anti-Trump, anti-MAGA Republicans come in, they're not going to help further their agenda. I think they're just going to stall and stall and stall, almost like the Dems stalled Kavanaugh until this midterm election, which honestly, I thought they were about to do that because it was getting so out of control. So what's your opinion about establishment Republicans versus Make America Great Again Republicans?
You're right, Dr. J. I agree. I think we should only be supporting, really, with any kind of intensity, the Make America Great Again candidates, the ones who are pledging to support Donald Trump. The good news is that these establishment Republicans are going by the wayside. We're losing a lot of them. A lot of them retired. A lot of them are not running in this cycle. I think the president has made sure that the people that he's endorsing are people that support his agenda. So we're remaking the Republican Party as we remake the country. And that's a good thing, I think, for the Republican Party, because if Jeb Bush would have been the nominee against Hillary Clinton, that's no difference. There's no choice there. I mean, that wing of the Republican Party needs to die, because all that wing has done is brought on, more government, more misery, and has been just a carbon copy of the Democrat Party. So thankfully, I think we are moving in the direction of Trump-endorsed candidates, and I think the Republican Party is moving in a better direction. We're getting rid of Paul Ryan. He's an example of a total rhino, a guy who's worthless, a guy who the other day was criticizing the president for speaking out against birthright citizenship, which is ridiculous that we have birthright citizenship, Dr. J. So Paul Ryan is an example of the kind of Republicans who need to go.
Agreed. And thankfully, he is going to be gone, and I cannot be more grateful than that. And I do think we are going to have, or the Make America Great Again candidates tomorrow will have a sweeping victory. Jeff, I want to thank you so much. Real quick before we go, I'm going to say two things for you. If you can give one final statement, specifically maybe about tomorrow, and also tell people, those of people who are living in Louisiana or in New Orleans, or people who can hear your show via iTunes, tell them where they could hear it and where they could see your show, your television show.
Okay. I think the best way for people to find out what's going on with me is to go to my website, which is my name, jeffcrouere.com, and that's Crouere. They can sign up for my YouTube channel there and check out my latest videos. They can order my book. They can sign up for my podcast. They can learn about my TV and radio program, can find out about my columns. So that's a great resource for people to go to, where they can sign up for different things that I'm doing. So it's just my name, jeffcrouere.com. My radio show is on 7 to 11 every morning, and people can listen all across the country. WGSO.com is where they can go and listen live. And we encourage people to call in from anywhere. And my email address for anybody that has any comments, thoughts, ideas, suggestions, want to sign up for my newsletter or contact me about anything, they can just reach me at Jeff, Jeff, at jeffcrouere.com, and that's CROUERE.com. And I love hearing from people about any issue really they want to address. And if they have guest ideas and that kind of thing. And then as far as tomorrow, Dr. J, I think we're going to have a day which is going to be exciting, maybe the most exciting day we've had in years. That is certainly the most exciting midterm ever. And I think Donald Trump is to be given the credit for that. I think the Republicans will hold on to the Senate. I think we'll gain some seats. I don't have a clear feeling about the House. I hope you're right, but I'm not sure. So I'd say right now, that's going to be where all the real drama is going to be. And I hope and pray the Republicans hold on to the House, because I would hate to see Maxine Waters as a committee chair and Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. That would be a true nightmare for the country, really.
Yes, it will. It will. But fortunately, I have a strong feeling that that's not going to happen. Again, everyone, Jeff Crouere, I want to thank you again. Like I said, I'll call you after the show. I want to talk to you a little bit more about things after. Everybody out there listening, remember what I said last hour and what I say every night of the show. There's only one thing you need to remember. That is Dr. J Radio Live. The name of the show, DRJ Radio Live, LIVE. For instance, the website, drjradiolive.com, at DRJ Radio Live is the same account, the same username for every single social media that you could think of, based on, for instance, Facebook, Google+, Flickr, Instagram, YouTube, Tumblr, even Gmail, Twitter, Patreon, Minds, and Buffer. And for those of you who don't have a Minds account, I highly recommend creating one, because it is the only open source, uncensored social media that does pay you in cryptocurrency just for using it. With that being said, folks, join us tomorrow. Hour one, we are going to be talking with a former CIA interrogator, and hour two will be going over the elections, because by that time, I would think here in California at the Pacific time, we will have a lot of the results in. And just like Jeff said and Daniel said, the first hour, I really think that we will have a sweeping Republican victory. With that being said, folks, this is Dr. J. I hope to catch you all tomorrow. Have a happy Monday night for those of you in the UK and EU. Well, I wish you a happy Tuesday morning. And for this time, I am officially signing off.